Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to Bohemian Grove. Maybe we'll meet Karl Rove. This is an episode of NEWSHOUND. Bohemian Grove forever. Or at least it seems like it's Bohemian Grove forever. We are going into the world of Bohemian Grove. I planned this out and mapped this out. I haven't read all of the articles involved in this episode of NEWSHOUND. I have read some of them, much the later ones, the stuff that's really revolving around Kissinger and other people who go down to Bohemian Grove in the 60s and 70s. Nixon's there, you know, George Bush is hanging around. So all of the gang, all of the New World Order gang of that time, of that period, is always a New World Order. Every era has an order, and every order has a new world in its like focus in its mind, the idea of what it's going to make. So we just keep trotting along. But this is going to go back. We're going to go back and understand this organization, Bohemian Grove, more than just the Alex Jones looking through the trees and be like, they're worshipping Moloch the Owl. Quickly, run! You know, instead of just looking at it that way and saying they're obviously planning big things there, it is a meeting ground for people who are like-minded and who have this idea that they are superior in some way. And I've come across, every time I come across someone influential, there seems to be a mention of the Grove in the background, especially in American politics mainly. Especially interesting is San Francisco, and that being the base for it. Such always seen as a very free and easy place. And so let's do this. Let's go on an adventure that starts in the late 1800s, in 1895, and let's travel through time. I will share my screen with you because I like doing that sort of thing, and hope that it is waiting. Yes, it is waiting for us, just as planned, just as I planned to do. Right, ladies and gentlemen, look at this for a piece of work. We are in the San Francisco Examiner, 18th of August, 1895. That's Madonna's birthday, isn't it? 18th of August. If it is Madonna's birthday, maybe it's Elvis's birthday. If it is Madonna's birthday, she's very old, but still, this is where we are. We're in the Examiner, and it's beautiful to look at these papers. I love it. It's one of the reasons why I love doing NEWSHOUND so much, and I love being involved in researching old stuff, is that there was an art form, of course, to writing, and this mixes in a lot with what Bohemian Grove was, because a lot of the people involved in it at the start were actors who were mixed in with these governments. They had friends in high places, and they were the elite actors who's hang around and be like, no, Chumley Warner, and look, there's our mate Chumley Warner, he's in office, you know. This is how it started. So it started flamboyantly. Some of the language here is going to be really hard for me to use. It's over 100 years old. So forgive me if I stutter, I get a couple of words wrong. There is a chance of this. Once you read this article, you're like, wow. And I might not read all the article, but I want to give you an idea of what's going on. We've got a lot to go through today in this NEWSHOUND, you know. A lot to go on. Let me put on my cheap green specs. These I bought from a pharmacy in Chile. And look at that beautiful piece of work. The Owl, the Mortarboard, and the Almighty Dollar is what the article is called. It's got this cherub reading bills, Jews, sundries, cigars, drinks. There must be a party going on. And there is. You're in Bohemian Grove. Of course there's a party. There's a New World Order party happening. And look, there you go. Look at that. Moloch the Owl sitting over here. And the balance is the Almighty Dollar itself. That's obviously, that must be on like trading house, customs house, the central banks. And there's a learned man, the educated man, I would think, with the small-brained educated man who is who's weighed out by the wisdom of the owl. And there they are. These are some of the rich elites that are going to hang around. So in the 70s, this is going to be Kissinger, Nixon, and Rockefeller or someone like that. Who knows? We'll find out. We'll find out some of the people who came here later. So I believe I know how this article should go. I'm going to read it. It's just column by column. but these pictures make it very confusing, and these lines make it very confusing because it almost looks like it starts somewhere up here on one side and down here on the other, but it doesn't. And the language makes it very difficult. Like I say, we're going back quite a far way. It's very exciting. That I love being back here. I love being back in the past. The club problem as understood by Alice Rix. I sent for you, I said to the man of many clubs. I am here, he responded. I will give you some tea, I said next. There was a little silence. Did you send for me? Asked the man of many clubs, taking the cup from my hand. Give me the tea. No, I replied, smiling tenderly upon him. It was to give you little cakes. He accepted these gravely and consumed 6. I taste bribery and corruption in these little cakes, he observed, beginning on the 7th. Is there a price set upon them? It is a matter of courtesy, I said. One tattles for them usually. About anything in particular? About clubs in general, if you do not mind. He smiled on me. It was his turn, but he said only, ah. Now, there are various and sundry sorts of ways of saying ah. It is a truly convenient word, that. It may be made to mean anything or nothing. It may be encouraging or entirely flat, supercilious, I love that word, complimentary, non-committal. It may be interrogatory, acquiescent, vague, acrimonious, split up, that's hard to say, insulting. It can be, above everything else, comprehensive. When the man of many clubs presented me with it over my teacups, it indicated comprehensiveness of a wide, all-embracing quality. I reached for another cushion and cuddled down into my corner with a little cozy feeling of content. I knew that we were nicely started. If there is one thing above another, the finished clubman loveth his own soul. It is gossip. He will gossip cheerfully on almost any subject, open to polite mention, but he will be especially gossipy as opportunity offers on matters pertaining to his own club. Witness the pleasing alacrity, the joyous enthusiasm with which club presidents, boards of directors, club secretaries and treasurers, club stewards, cooks and buttons, to say of members prominent or otherwise, will tell all they know and perchance more. And never less at the dropping of a hat, at the winking of an eye. Laws, written or unwritten, against this trick of tattling restrain them not at all. They invite criticism, they risk expulsion, as the case may be. But talk they will and talk they must. We have learned of late, not you and I of the informed alone, but the whole curious, amused town of us, how Mr. This, that, or the other has failed to pay his dues at the Bohemian Club, or overdrawn his hunger or his thirst there, that has been posted, and that his name, however famous it may be, is like to be dropped ere long from off the members' list. Has he whispered the tale to the gossiping winds? Nay, not he. He may have owned up for it when it was brought home to him. For the man who cannot pay his bills may be honest enough in lesser ways. But be sure he kept his story first hand for all a sympathetic ear. It is any other member from the president down who has gone a-cackling over the town. Meantime, my man of many clubs is reading my thought. You know, he begins with a virtuous air. It is against club principles to gossip. We never do it. He pauses for a moment. Have you read the papers? I admit, in a shamefaced way, that I have. It is so evident that he hopes for better things from me. He shakes his head and sighs. Strange, he says, how such impressions get out. We're so careful ourselves, you know. The spirit of the club is one of fraternity. Men pull together irrespective of personality, and of course it is very hard for a woman to grasp this idea. I will try and make you understand. Now, I adore man in the instructive mood. When he climbs his pedestal and pulls his ladder up after him and talks down at me and tries to make me understand, I could die for him. There was my man of many clubs, talking and trying, explaining, expounding, illustrating, above all simplifying. And there I was resting. He looked so well at it, so sure, so comfortable, so superior, so not to be shaken, and from the innermost conscience speaking, as the Germans put it, in their concise and simple and direct way, I gazed upon him admiringly. He is good to look upon, clean cut and perfectly groomed. He wears just the right clothes at just the right time. One can see with shut eyes that he has never had a care in his life. He was born, I am given to understand, with one gold spoon in his mouth, and he has, to my certain knowledge, purchased the other 11 during his subsequent years, and a whole dinner service or so in the same substantial metal besides. He is a member of the Bohemian Club, along other clubs, and he has something of a name as a patron of arts in her teens. As of art in her teens. Woman, he is saying, is narrow. And he bows so graciously as he says it that I feel it is an honor to belong to a sex he regards as less than an inch wide and distinction to be told of. She's narrow, he continues, and vain. She cannot understand the party spirit, which is the very life of a club. Men organize where women would row. Men, you see, never row in their clubs. I gasped. What then, I demanded, has ruffled up the feathers of the owl? Mere chatter, he replied blandly. Mere newspaper talk. The Bohemian Club was never so solid and secure, and there is absolutely no feeling among the artists. Solid and secure. Sorry, this is her voice. And there is absolutely no feeling among the artists, I ask. Oh, the artists, he said lightly. Oh, possibly, very possibly, there may be. There always is, you know. They are a queer lot, these professional men. They seem to feel that the Bohemian Club belongs to them and ought to be run for them. And you see, they really do not amount to much outside their professions. Some of them are very clever in their own lines, I have no doubt. Well, I had an idea, I observed modestly, that it was their club, you know. These queer professional men started the Bohemian Club, I thought, and gave it the name it has, and feel a sort of pride in that part of it. Is that right? Oh, in a measure, he agrees. But they have no money to spend, and the club now has large bills to meet, and it depends on its solid members. These other fellas will come around all right in good time. They will get their little money together and be ready to pay up, and we will probably let them in again. How about what they have done for the club, I asked. I cannot help feeling some sympathy, you see, for those poor old queer tricks who made a club like the Frankenstein monster and are now in danger of being swallowed by it. What have they done? Why, the pictures, the cartoons, I say, in the way of material benefits and the whole spirit of the club for the rest. Oh, the pictures are there, he replies assuringly. The pictures are all there, and their names are still on the canvases, you know. They have all the credit of them. Great pictures, too, some of them. he added with pride. As for the spirit of the club, well, there has been a great deal of nonsense talked on that score. The proper spirit for a gentleman's club is a desire to pay its bills and keep up its appearances. That is what the new membership and the new board of directors are doing. I cannot see why there should be any other cause for dissatisfaction. I can remember the Bohemian Club in the old days when a good dinner was not to be had under its roof for love or money, unless one of the members cooked it. And even then, it was flavored with the 10,010 odors of the market. See how better the club is today? Yes, I said doubtfully, for I do not love to eat in the precincts of the market myself, and the argument rather appealed to me. Yes, but is it not really another club now? It seems to me rather an association of merchant princes than of artist bohemians. Quite so, he assented, with a satisfied air. Then why call it the Bohemian Club? Why? Because it's a Bohemian Club. I understand, I said cautiously, that some of its members rather object to being called Bohemians. Most decidedly, he replied with the utmost promptness. I suspect you, I said, after that. Indeed, he laughed. You may be sure of me. As I understand matters, then the Bohemian element is not desirable. I made the interrogation apparent, and he answered in rather an alarmed way with another. You mean that the solid members, as you call them, would not care if the artists and the professional men dropped out altogether? Oh, you mistake entirely, he said. We need them in the club very much. We want a few of them, of course, because we look to them at the time we have Jinx. And then the club has always had a name for that sort of thing. Our distinguished visitors, too, expect it. Oh, I see, I said, laughing. You keep them there on hand to boheme, to order then. If you choose to put it in that way, he answered. Well, I do not call that a fraternal spirit, I observed. Women could do no worse. I hope they will go off and leave you and have a club of their own. He laughed serenely. Your amiable hopes are foredoomed to die, he said. There will be no new Bohemian Club. That way madness lies. Clubs cost something, dear lady. They cost something each month, with most persistent and painful regularity. Our dear Bohemians will never leave us until they are dropped out. I will tell you something, though, lowering his voice into that confident key which is so rich in promise. The Bohemian, who is not a Bohemian by profession, but by preference, the dilettante Bohemian, as it were, is slipping and sliding away from us. Uphill at that, up towards Sutter Street, up to the University Club. He rose in a leave taken away. Tell me more, I urged. That is quite enough, he said, for 7 small cakes. I reflected. It is true that it is not in the nature feminine to grasp the spirit of the club, and women despise what she cannot understand. Oh, and woman despises what she cannot understand. Man does not wish her to understand the club spirit, to descend into vulgar punster wit. He holds the club over her in a way he twits her with it. He has a manner or two which seems to say, I shall escape all this at the club, or I shall go to the club for an hour or so and breathe. This is infuriating. I remember the dawn of this rage in my small soul at the age of, oh well, never mind, extreme youth of 1 year or another. It really matters very little which. There was a club in my block on Bush Street. The block did not belong exclusively to me, but I had that happy sense of proprietorship in which only the very young and the very old feel in their neighborhoods. This was the first club on my horizon, and it was called the Wild Indians. It had its haunts in the barn, and the barn door was chalked this legend: "No girls can get in here." There was the club spirit for you, the club spirit which women cannot grasp. And I would like to ask anyone who has time to answer how women can grasp it over the hedge of prickly thorns with which man has set it prudently about. "No girls can get in here" is the principle on which the club door hinges, and woman chokes with a sense of deep personal injury at the thought of it. There was a loud lady who conversed on women's rights in the village a moon or so ago, and she stamped her common sense shoes and beat the air elegantly with her emancipated right hand, and she shrieked, "What business have they got to have clubs to which women cannot belong? Is this equality? No, no, no! Why do they want to get off alone in their clubs, away from their wives and their daughters? What do they do there?" "Aye, good madam, there's the rub. Man in his club does, let us say, as he pleases, a privilege to die for, I am thinking, and one he rarely gets at home. But you, dear married lady, have your small suspicions, and would not believe, for so simple a reason, as this man seeks the club he calls his own. You consider the club as an enemy to the home, and in your mind it goes hand in hand like Juno's swans, coupled and inseparable, with that other mysterious foe, the other woman." Fear of cheating. "You will give up that horrid club, won't you, dear?" she says as soon as they are engaged, and he looks in her eyes and he sees the whole world there and something of heaven besides, and he kisses her and he says, "Yes, darling." He gives up his horrid club. That is to say, he gives up going there for a while. He does not resign. I wonder why. There is a tapping on my window glass. I see a wild-haired man through the leaded panes, and in the twilight I take him to be Weary Raggles. His voice reaches me reassuringly. It is the voice of my favorite Bohemian. The window gives upon the porch, and I slide the bolts in the spirit of hospitality. "Come in," I say. "Come out," he answers. "Well, just why?" I ask. "It is much more luxurious within." "That is just why," he replies gloomily. "I am sick of luxury." "I do not look it," I remark unkindly, and he certainly does not. His coat is burnished to brilliancy at every seam. His linen is neither new or cut nor neat of edge. His tie has been laundered, and his russet shoes are of that dark complexion which comes of many cleanings. He continues to gloom on the chilly porch, and I coax him. "Come," I say, opening the window wider. "I will give you a mug of beer, you poor tramp." "Is it flat, cheap beer?" he questions suspiciously. "Indeed it is not," I reply with warmth. "It is cool, sparkling, expensive beer, with its little blue necktie on it." "I do not wish it," he answers sternly. "Bring me the dear, old beer I used to drink. Bring it to me in a cracked stein. Better still, a cracked pitcher. Best of all, in a tin can. Let me drink it in your cellar or out in your backyard. Or give me a handful of sawdust to sprinkle on your vine-covered porch, and I may consent to drink it here with you. But I must have thin, watery, spiritless beer, and dusty sausage, and aged, decrepit crackers with it. And, mind you, nothing must be paid for." He steps through the window after this and looks discontentedly about the library. "Faugh!" he says. "Rugs, cushions, palms, and you look distinguishedly rich with all that lace stuff on. Why can't you be sincere and say you are a Bohemian at heart? But you are nothing of the kind. You are painted without and full of dead men's bones within. You love luxury, not art. I can see it here all around you. You would have more of it if you could. You are no more Bohemian than... He pauses and laughs a wild and dreadful laugh. You are no more Bohemian than the Bohemian Club. I laugh, quite frankly, at this too. No. You know, he continues, trying to overcome his prejudice against good beer, that we are going to have a new club. All the real Bohemians in town. Have you heard anything about it? I heard that you were not going to have it at all. Who has been here? One of the Philistines. Ah! This was a sneering ah. He's ah. This was a sneering ah. He spoke very kindly of you, I continued reprovingly. He said the old club could not spare you, that you were needed to to make monkeys of ourselves, he interrupted savagely. Oh, don't hesitate. That's what he said now, isn't it? No, I replied meekly, but that is what I said. How lovely of you, he observed fervently. It is the truth, though. We fellows who made that club... Respect the dead, I suggested. Oh, well, you know what I mean. Our kind of fellows made it, anyway. They got along well enough without money. They liked the old rooms. They got gloriously happy on claret. Claret was good enough for them. They did not come to the club in swallow-tail coats and white ties and do kingly dude at the poor devil who had only one coat to his back and a velveteen jacket. They did not talk trade and smell of money. They painted pictures for the club because they loved it. Yes, they did, I answered with fine meaning. And they got up to Jinx with their own hands. Jinx at any fellow that any fellow could afford to join in. They did not clamour for mirrors and new carpets and bric-a-brac and electric lights. They knew how to enjoy life without the evils of luxury. He thumped my pet cushion viciously. If they, he ranted on, did not pay their dues, the secretary forgot about the date, and it was all right until they could sell a picture or something. And if they never paid, it was all right. Those were the men to make a successful Bohemian Club. They were an honor and a credit to it. They were the real thing. Yes, I assented again. They were. By this time, my favorite Bohemian was more acute. You think we are not? He demanded savagely. I maintained a discreet silence. Well, we come, I beg 10,000 pardons, a deal nearer to it than the set they've got there with us. I want you to know, any man who can sing a comic song and make a fool after dinner speech is a Bohemian without that crowd. Yeah, they make me tired. Did you read about their polite objection to being called Bohemians? Oh, I know about those by experience, I replied. I had an interest in chic, you may remember, and that polite objection cost me $25. Never paid then. Never paid then or yet. That is beautiful. May I tell it? Well, I intend to. We will get you to dinner at our new club, he says pleasantly. Thanks, I reply, but without enthusiasm. I remember the dusty sausage, the aged, crumbling crackers, the flat and spiritless beer. We may not have truffles and champagne, he adds, as if it were looking through the top of my head, but we will have brains. I glance anxiously at him, but he evidently does not mean it. He is absorbed in thought. A satirical smile curls his thin young lip. I must tell you of the sort of discussion one hears these days at the Bohemian Club, he continues. Imagine two men, thorough Bohemians, of course, worth 2 or 3 million between them, dressed to the ear in the very latest swagger style, no end of dog, drinking champagne. Oh, we all drink champagne at the Bohemian Club. Now listen. I say, old man, been reading a new novel. Came across new word, gaucherie. What's the meaning of gaucherie?
Hanged if I know. Never heard of it. Ask somebody else. Ask Finn Gummy. He's awfully clever, you know.
I say, Finn Gummy, this is across the table. Can you tell us the meaning of the word gaucherie? And Finn Gummy says, by Jove, that's odd. Words escaped me entirely. Hold on, I've got it. Means light conversation, you know. What you call it? Small talk, that's it, small talk. I weep with delight over this tale. What do you think of that? He says.
I do not see how you can contemplate leaving a club where such things happen, I reply, still chuckling.
Oh, that's all very well to hear about it on the outside, he observes moodily. But when it's in one's own club, the club which we Bohemians have made famous of the word over with our art, our music, our letters, our witty speeches, what are you laughing at?
I am thinking of something the Philistine told me. He said women could not club because they are vain.
He rose with much dignity. I shall not stay and dine, he said coldly.
No, you will not, I replied. You are not asked.
I am very hungry, he suggested with an entire change of manner.
I shook my head. I am going to dine the rich and the great tonight, I said. I have several elaborate dishes on. The best wine I could afford and dinner cards. You would not enjoy it.
I don't know, he said dubiously.
Well, I replied heartlessly, I will send you one of the cards tomorrow, and you can write and tell me whether you would have enjoyed it or not. It was over the entrees that the university man warmed to the mention of his club. It may occur to the narrow-minded that I was feeding all these various people to their undoing, but they were not aware of my purpose, which takes the sting out of the wasp entirely. Moreover, it has long since gone over gaff that if you want a man to talk, you must put something in his mouth.
Wow, you can say that again. That's a sentence. You have not told me, I said, why you gave up the Bohemian Grove when you joined the university.
Is it not customary for a glass of fashion and a mould of form like yourself to confine himself to one club?
I did not really need to, he said elusively.
And for the matter of that, I belong to the Pacific Union.
Ah, you do, so you do. Sorry. I cried rapturously. That wasn't much of a cry.
You seem so happy, he remarked, looking at my rapture curiously. Why, of course I am, joyed, I said frankly. I was wondering what guileless soul I might press for the Pacific Union atmosphere, and here you are right to my hand, Pantella. You will tell me everything. You are such a tattlebag. You are a mine of wealth to me at this moment. Let me do something for you. I am so grateful. Have some almonds. He strewed them daintily over the cloth, ranged them neatly in a row around his remaining fork, and ate them a row at a time. Then he talked a stream. He said all this. I did not join the university club when I came here, although I quite expected to do so, as a lot of men who were in my class were members. I was put up there naturally, and I did not altogether fancy what I saw. The club was divided into two distinct sets, the deadly bores and the babes about town. The first lot knew your father, you know, the kind of fossil, I suppose. Hate them, I said with a fervour. They always remember the date of one's birth and the odious things one did in childhood. Exactly, he replied, evidently pleased by my intelligence. The babes were not so borous, but they were so bored. One got tired of looking at their anu. Made me nervous, too. It was all on the surface, you know, and I was afraid that it would rub off and I would catch some of it. I am too old to be bored now, you see. I am over 30. It would be like playing with blocks again. The university infants have it most awfully. They sit in the window and watch the slowness of the world through their jaded eyes, and tell of the paralyzing bats they do not go on, and shocking drinks they do not drink. In the dining room, they become really amusing. Wi-Fi! In the weariest way. What sort of fruit? Strawberries, sir? What colour are they? Why, red, sir. Great God, red strawberries again. I do not believe that, I observe. Well, since you are so uncivil as to doubt me, madame, ask any other member of the university club, you please. They all know the story. So I fancied the atmosphere of the Bohemian Club would suit me better. Eastern men get a great idea of it, you know. I liked it for a while, and then, well, then I did not like it quite so well. It got just a shade too mercantile for my palate. I am no snob, I hope, but I like to meet my own class of men at dinner. I like to hear intelligent discussions which do not deal entirely with the transaction of business. I like professional men who are clean as well as clever, who pay their bills and have good manners. I like the artist when he is a gentleman. When he is not, I prefer to buy his pictures from a dealer, to read his thoughts between two covers, to hear his music at the opera. I am not a Bohemian, perhaps, he added rather humbly, if the truth be told, but I am not a Philistine, am I? You are a dilettante Bohemian, I made answer, and if it will not startle you, I may add that you have the taste of a gentleman. He laughed agreeably and continued, No. I meet such men at the university club. They crowded a trifle closely by the babes and the bores, but they are there. The upper crust of the gentlemanly, I will say dilettante, if you wish. Bohemia is going over to this club slowly and surely, if it does not let down its barriers too easily, as the cosmos has done. It is the club of the future here. I should say that it is a young men's club with all the possibilities that implies. You would not call the Pacific Union Club a young men's club, would you? I asked innocently. He threw back his head and laughed. Not unless I was trying to be funny as you are, he retorted. Well, why on earth did you join that? I wanted a place to die from. It is not as easy as you think. To die? No, to die from the Pacific Union Club. I never thought it was easy, I answered truthfully. I never hear of the Pacific Union man dying. They live forever. That, he said maliciously, it's because they drink their own whiskey. They keep the bottles in their lockers and they mix their own drinks. Many a man has been hastened to an untimely grave by use of the wrong bottle. This precaution preserves health and saves expense. Is that all they do there, I query? Just drink whiskey? Oh, no, he replies. They eat the best dinners in San Francisco and play the biggest poker games too. Why, they are regular old things, I exclaim in the pious astonishment. Oh, that is the younger set, he explains. There are some dozen or more of wild young blades of 45 or 50 summers who cut the tremendous swathes with the sowing of their wild oats. They furnish the solid, settled members with no end of gossip. They are a rapid lot. It is feared that they will not amount to much when they grow up. I suppose they are responsible for that frivolous elevator, I suggest. That is almost undignified elevator in San Francisco. It is almost immoral. I always expect to see a pantomime ballet come dancing down it. I look in every time I pass the club to see if Harlequin and Columbine are in the halls. He smiled and said something rather witty. It is only used, I assure you, by the lean and slippered pantaloon. And these wild kids of 55, I ask anxiously. That's not my voice. They are not your associates, I trust? Saints defend us, no, he answers with holy air. I have no associates in the Pacific Union Club. I am not really fit to belong to it as yet. What must one be to be fit, I ask. He answered me with another question. Do you, he said, remember Monsieur Maréchal, Duc de la Roche-Martel Boisjeu, and how he is spoken of in history? Yes, I say. He was a stiff, starched, stingy, stodgy communard, shooting, church-going, time-serving, place-hunting, pious-eyed, pompous old prig. The university man regards me admiringly. Then he says, he was fit. And there you go. It's a long one to get from. Sorry if I dragged at the end a bit. It's fantastic. Trying to work out which impression to do is hard when I'm just going through it for the first time. Never read that before, so it's amazing. Alice Rix, San Francisco, August 1895. I tell you something today. We are going on an adventure for sure. And that is a long way to start off this adventure, because it will start off where it means to go on, because or where it leads to, where it eventually leads to. The Owl and Mortarboard, written by Alice Rix, is one of the most intriguingly fascinating ways for a woman of the time to understand, an educated woman of the time to understand what is going on behind the doors of clubs, behind the set of these three different type of characters. You know, the first type of character is these rich man, the banker type, the club going man, you know, the man who runs all of the clubs in that sense, which can be probably construed as being government or hierarchy, the man of the clubs. And then the second one is this bohemian who's contradictory and does the opposite, but is kept around because he's funny, and this is what these guys need to balance themselves out, balance along the mighty dollar. You know, there's these guys are the impoverished and the other guys are the rich, you know, the previous are the rich and those bohemians are the impoverished. And then you've got these university educated guys who kind of mingle between them and see themselves as above both of them, but in a sense they're part of both of them in different ways, and they train up both of them to be these characters and look down on them. This is something that works. Every generation does the same, and this is captured amazingly in this article, the Owl, the Mortarboard, and the Almighty Dollar. And it's a very interesting way to start this look at Bohemian Grove. And the Bohemian Club, as it was called in San Francisco, was obviously interesting and caused massive fascination for years to come. So 20 years after that article, on Halloween 1915, we come to our next in the San Francisco Chronicle. And this chronicle title, so we're on page 58, and it says, Bohemian Club occupies unique niche, famous names on its members list. Already starts, you know, it already starts. This is not the normal club, and they know it. This is not the normal club. This is a special club for special people, and straight away it got noted that this is different. This is over 150 years of being very different. And it started, as it says here, and this is why I chose a few of these articles, so you can understand its history. You can know more about its history from just a few articles than you do from having to go and look at Wikipedia and stuff, which won't give you an air or an essence of what something is and what the people who occupied it were like. Now, that previous article gives you like what someone outside the club would have seen of the club, someone who's completely outside, not only not a member of the club, but unable to go there because she's not a woman, you know, and it's also in a sense outside society, how she sees the society. Man, that's a very interesting way to look at the things. And of course, language back here in this time is much is very interesting. It is sometimes it's straighter and sometimes it's more wibbly wobbly. Humble start in the early 70s is recalled. Newspaper men are credited with originating the idea of famed organization. Growth is remarkable. High Jinx, staged in summer in Grove on Russian River. Distinctive. Already you can see these guys are really, you know, they're saying this is special, this is something else. This is 1915.
you know, we're about to hit into World War One, and the focus of these people get more and more, and then World War Two focus gets even more and more until these people are creating the world we're living in, the entire globe, every single country, affecting every single. They're distant from that now, but America in the 1800s is them really looking away from their own disastrous civil war, and their own strife, and their own trouble. They've mandated they've said a clear winner. They've got a mandate because of their clear victory. America is now like this. Now let's look at the rest of the world and pretend we're not. So from the 1800s, they've got this whole like, oh, we don't get involved in other people's stuff. And at the whole time, they're setting up the infrastructure for getting involved in other people's stuff. That the Bohemian Club of San Francisco was started on its more or less venturesome and certainly lively and successful career by a bunch of newspaper men way back in the 70s is a record in the club's archives. So it was actually within newspapers, it was newspaper men themselves who started to bring this club together. That's very interesting. A very appropriate course for NEWSHOUND and for examining newspaper archives and the effect newspaper men have had on the world. Because, you know, it is so powerful. Media, propaganda, all of it, so powerful. Newspapers, really powerful. Massive history that show you like this whole world that's been built has been built around the newspapers. Have been built around propaganda, been built around things newspaper men create. Primarily, the object of the organization was the promotion of good fellowship among journalists and the elevation of journalism to a place of popular estimation to which it is entitled. It was proposed that only professional newspaper writers and journalists be eligible to be active members. Artists, actors, essayists, writers of books, poets, and dramatic authors having honorary membership on payment of certain fees. It presently was discovered that such an arrangement would not work out because of money. That's what they were really talking about 20 years ago. You know, we don't have so much, I don't have that much money. Oh, okay, well, why are all these guys doing that? Well, you know, we don't have much money and we're the entertainment now. And the original constitution was amended to extend active membership not only to those connected professionally with literature, art, music, and the drama, but to such others as may appreciate these objects. Growth of membership. The membership has grown from 24 chartered members in 1872 to nearly 900 regular members in 1915. That's massive. The first meeting at which the proposal to launch a Bohemian Club was made took place in the editorial room of the San Francisco Examiner. What we were talking, the one we were talking about last time. So the newspaper Alice Rix writes a piece in 20 years ago is central to the creation of Bohemian Grove. Maybe why it was written in that way, because there was questions in the San Francisco Examiner by the women saying, what the hell? Why can't we get involved? It's this newspaper. In the editorial rooms of the San Francisco Examiner, February 5th, 1872, there being present Daniel O'Connell of the Bulletin, James F. Bowman of the Chronicle, Joseph N.H. Irwin of the Examiner, Thomas Newcomb of the Call, Sands W. Foreman, Frederick Whymper, and F.G. Kenny. It appears from the records of that meeting held on February 23rd, 1872, that there was some dispute as to the distinction of the name, distinction maybe. I'm calling it the name Bohemian for the club, using the name Bohemian for the club. Some having declared that much a title was not respectable. The discussion which followed produced some oratorical fireworks in which Colonel J.C. Cremony of the Commercial Herald, who proposed the designation, and Daniel O'Connell outpointed and overwhelmed those opposed to the name suggested. So the club was dubbed Bohemian, a name that has clung to it throughout the 43 years of life. So in 1915, it's already 43 years old. List of officers.
These were the first officers: President Thomas Newcomb, Vice President Henry Edwards, Secretary Sans W. Foreman, Treasurer Arpad Harasfi, Directors D.P. Belknap, Edward Bosque, Samuel M. Brooks, A.G. Hawes, J.C. Williamson, Assistant Director J.H. Sayer. Certainly, there was nothing pretentious about the first club rooms, which were situated in the Astor Building, southeast corner of the Sacramento and Webb Streets. Carpets on the floor had been bequeathed to the club by the former tenant, and there was no money in the treasury with which to purchase furniture. Arrangements were made whereby a number of these antique chair relics of somebody's early prosperity were bought on credit. Credit also was extended by a dealer who sent a sideboard into the club room. Some kind person donated a table. The rent was $50 a month. The formal opening, which took place March 25th, 1872, brought together the elites of the literati and the artists of the city, and was such a success that thereafter there was not the least anxiety concerning the payment of financial obligations. Famed writers join. Mark Twain, Samuel M. Clemens, stepped into the club as an honorary member October 17, 1873, and Bret Harte about the same time. Lack of space to accommodate the growing membership compelled the Bohemians to remove to more spacious quarters at 430 Pine Street over the California Market. In January 1877, where the odor of new cheese and stale fish and the crowning of dissipated cocks at all hours, crowing of dissipated cocks at all hours of the night were distinct inspirations. This building was destroyed by flames November 4th, 1894, but this was after the Bohemian Club had moved out. February 23rd, 1899, the club moved into its club building at the northeast corner of the Post Street and Grant Avenue, where it remained until the fire of April 18 to 20th, 1906. At the time of the fire, said a former official of the club, one member, a lover of art, saved some of the art treasures. Another, a hard-headed businessman, saved our account books, together with the statements, which had been made out to send to the members. It was only natural for each man to have done as he did. Supplied with the best. Though smoked out of house and home, the Bohemians came back just as though they never had been away. Now they have the best that money can buy and are justly proud of their achievements. And with John Boyle O'Reilly, they say, I rather live in Bohemia than in any other land. The new home of the Bohemian Club at the Post and Taylor Street was dedicated November the 12th, 1910, with due ceremony. Leave it to the Bohemians for ceremony, and indeed it was a night forever to be remembered by those privileged to attend. The dedicatory play, The Oracle, was written for the occasion by Peter Robertson and set to the music by Humphrey J. Stewart. It represents the visit of a stranger, Bohemia, to the temple of Apollo, where he consults the oracle as to his future and is greeted by Euterpe, Thalia, and Calliope, and crowned with bay as a message of good fortune from Laris. Bohemia delivers his message to the oracle. Nor care I for the best of woman's heart. No boon I crave, I would but ask the counsel of the god. My country is Bohemia, there we have raised a temple. Close of celebration. Henry A. Melvin pronounced the valedictory and the sacred owl, and St. John of Nepomuc, patron saint of the club, were carried aloft in great state amid the glare of torches. The house of the Bohemian Club is 4 stories in height. The first floor of the court is in the Corinthian style. Here they have a red room, lounging room, billiard room, and wine room, finished in various shades of colour. The library, Elizabethan style, is on the second floor, where also is located the theatre. The third and fourth room are devoted to members and guest rooms, all furnished in exquisite fashion, all of which costs over 325,000. Back then, it's a lot of money. Of the Jinx of the Bohemian Club books have been written, the central idea, according to the traditions of the club, is the annihilation of care by champion Bohemia, and to this end, they say, the Jinx are successful beyond measure. The first Midsummer High Jinx was held in June 1878 in the woods near Taylorville, Sonoma County, as a farewell to Harry Edwards. Story of the Jinx. The story of the High Jinx of the Bohemian Club of San Francisco really is a story of the club itself. Low Jinx comes in on the side for special mention. As to the history of the term High Jinx, the club borrows it from Walter Scott's novel Guy Mannering, where High Jinx, presided over by Councillor Playdell, is more elevated in character than the drinking bouts of Scotch. Upon one occasion in the club's history, many years ago, an attempt to introduce broad and unseemly vulgarity was promptly suppressed, and since that time nothing of the kind has marred the enjoyment of the High Jinx. The method of High Jinx procedure is described in the Annals of Bohemian Club as follows. The members chosen by trustee or directors to conduct festivities is a man noted for someone of those talents for the fostering of which the club has formed and which the club ever delights to honour. He is called Sire. The Sire, from his own store of wisdom, if he has any, selects a topic for the evening, literary or otherwise, and selects from the members at large men to deal with it: poets, essayists, orators, humorists, musicians, singers, and painters. He then issues a printed invitation to the club, setting forth the nature of his entertainment with all the originality he and his friends possess. I'm sure that it was meant to be originality here, but apparently it's originality. And I can't help but to read the words, because some of these words aren't used anymore. When you go back over 100 years in newspaper archives, you find some of the words aren't used. So it could be originality rather than originality, but I doubt it. Sire sits enthroned. On the appointed evening, the club seats itself individually on the chairs hired for the occasion, while Sire enthroned, as it were, on the easier chair, the platform at one end of the make up your own ending if you want, one end of the room, with a gavel in his hand and a huge loving cup filled with punch placed within easy reach of the lectern in front of him, brings to the meeting to order. Then is the theme of the evening discussed in prose, enshrined in verse, solos are sung about it, and glees, instrumental pieces, and orchestral effects make their motive, all of which served up with an accompaniment of such liquids as each member prefers, together with the incense of tobacco, form a mellow and pleasing entertainment. While the House Jinx of the Bohemian Club have attracted attention throughout the land, a distinctive feature is the Midsummer Jinx in Bohemian Club on Russian River. There the Bohemians present their annual play upon a stage framed by giant redwoods which tower 250 to 300 feet in the air. These plays are of the highest order and are given for members and guests alone. The matter of expense is not considered, and it is said that the last production, Apollo, cost the club more than $10,000. 1,000 members and guests witness the performance. Critics declared that Apollo, the book by Frank Pick Pixley, author of Prince of Pislan, and the music by Edward Faber Schneider, was one of the best of the 13 Grove plays produced in the 13 successive years by the Bohemians. One eye of the owl closed. Here we go. Concerning the tutelary deity of the club, the owl, that ancient bird of wisdom, James Anthony Froude wrote in Oceana. There, the Bohemians, presiding genius at the club in Pallas Athene, in the shape of an owl. But for some reason they could not or would not explain to me. She had one eye shut. Sir Edwin Arnold, guest of the club dinner, referred to in this wise to the bird. As I entered the club, I caught a glimpse of the great owl in its niche. At the head of your beautiful staircase, and he seemed to wink in a friendly fashion to say to me, "Be wise, but be not too wise." The late Joaquin Miller, the poet of the Sierra, was a staunch member of the Bohemian Club. It was his request that the Bohemians should conduct his funeral. His wish was carried out, and although the mortal remains of his last of the pioneer poets were not cremated on the funeral pyre as he prepared for himself at the Heights on Oakland Hills, his ashes were scattered there after impressive ceremonies. Club own a mummy. One of the club's priceless possessions is a mummy of the priestess of ancient rites of Isis, presented by Jeremiah Lynch. The High Jinx reception to the lady 2 years ago stands forth, one of the bright particular illuminations in the club's history. Many years ago, Lynch gave the club the mummy of another Egyptian princess, but this valuable relic was destroyed in the big fire. It was with great difficulty that Lynch, while in Egypt, secured the second princess. Wow. So they burnt the first mummy and they got another one. These are people are just... An event which the pioneers of the club have engraved upon the memories tablets was the reception to the tragedian Tommaso Salvini, which dates back to February 1886. Then there was a dinner to Charles A. Dana of the New York Sun in 1883. Let me zoom out a little bit. In 1883. Receptions for Edwin Booth, James Anthony Froude, Sir Edwin Arnold, Henry M. Stanley, George Augustus Sala, and to scores of others whose names are among the upon fame's roll of honor. In 1889, Rudyard Kipling, whose talents at the time had not been recognized, was a guest at the dinner in the Bohemian Club. While he was not heard from on that occasion, it developed later that he was taking notes, for he faithfully described on paper his experiences of that evening. So the Bohemian Club of San Francisco continues on its merry way. Ever watchful, lest the ogre care to show his head, and ever ready to bounce on a rock on said ogre's head when opportunity presents itself. The Bohemian spirit doth prevail. The wise old owl with the winking starboard eye still occupies the niche and holds his place in the center of the great seal, where he bears the inscription, "Weaving spiders, come not near." Constitution is brief. Probably no social organization in the city has a constitution as brief as to the point as the Bohemian Club. It is instituted, states the Constitution, for the association of gentlemen connected professionally with literature, art, music, and drama, and all those who, by reason of their love or appreciation of these objects, may be deemed eligible. A further declaration of the Constitution is that no demonstration on behalf of any religious or political object shall ever be made by the club. The bylaws provide that residents of San Francisco or the places within 50 miles thereof may not be invited to the privileges of the restaurant department oftener than once in 60 days, except by permission of the board of directors, following a list of the chartered members enrolled March 9th, 1872. J. Armstrong, David P. Belknap, Ambrose Bierce, H.R. Bloomer, E. Bosqui, James F. Bowman, James C. Cremony, H.S. DeLieba, Henry Edwards, Sam W. Foreman, Arpad Harasfi, J.N.H. Irwin, T.L. Johns, F.G. Kenny, D. McCarthy, Frank J. Murphy, B.F. Nefali, Thomas Newcomb, Theodore Newham, Daniel O'Connell, R.C. Rogers, W.V. Wells, C.A. Wetmore, and Frederick Whymper. List of officers. Officers now in charge of the club, this is 1915, are President Frank P. Deering, Vice President Elmer H. Cox, Secretary Scott Hendrick, Treasurer George T. Klink, Director Seth Mann, E.S. Schneider, Livingstone, Jinx, Jinx, Gordon Hall, Charles J. Dickman, yes, Joseph S. Thompson, and Leroy Tyrone. List of honorary members: David Bispam, Luther Burbank, Ena D. Coolbrith, John Drew, Robert Howe Fletcher, Alexander Harrison. Right, okay, I will basically stop. There's a lot of people here, a lot of honorary members. Frank L. Unger, Yates. You know, there's going to be a few famous people around here. So that is 1915. And we are still in 1915 when we go to the Des Moines Register. Des Moines, I think that's where Bill Bryson's from. You might see a couple of his books behind me. Member of the Royal Society, it turns out, honorary member. There are not many American members of the Royal Society. Talking about clubs. One of them, of course, is the Royal Society is Elon Musk, and another is Bill Bryson. These are two of the only Americans. I'm not sure how many others are in there. And this in November the 25th, 1915. So this article is less than a month after the previous Halloween one. It's a bit shorter. It gets shorter, and we're going to get more to the point. I wanted to explain the dramatic emphasis because, like the last article kind of explains what they do, and what they explained in 1915 there is still what we saw when Alex Jones snuck through the woods of Bohemian Grove on the night of the one of their events later on, almost 100 years after that. So the events have been going for a century, and they've been almost exactly the same set. It's almost like worshipping a certain routine and a deity and a certain set of ways was decided upon, and worshipping anything else was looked down upon. So I'm just going to quickly take a drink. Grove plays set new standard in American music and drama. Now, as was said in the last one, a lot of effort was put in to the plays. Rufus Steele, member of the Bohemian Club of San Francisco, tells of outdoor drama with giant sequoias for setting, businessmen, artists, and writers go into camp. And this is by Irving N. Brandt. And likely Irving N. Brandt is maybe a member, because it seems to be a lot like this. Remember, it's set by newspapers, and a lot of this is propaganda, making this elite seem like the elite of the past, connecting them with Greek stories and deities, ancient spiritual worship in forests. This is something that they were trying to create the elites to look like they were some set above. Rufus Steele, a San Francisco writer for the Saturday Evening Post and other magazines, and former editor of the Chicago Chronicle, who is a guest at the home of Mr. and Mrs. J.B. Weaver, is one of the moving spirits in the Bohemian Grove of San Francisco, which is known throughout the world for its contribution to literature and music. He wrote the club's play The Fall of Ugg, presented 2 years ago. The Bohemian Grove is unique when its organization and purposes. There is nothing in this country or elsewhere resembling it, even remotely. Its call to fame is the Grove play presented each summer among the giant redwoods of the Coast Range Mountains. Upon the plateau, backed by sequoias towering 300 feet into the air and stretching ridge above the ridge back onto the mountains, the Bohemian Club and a few hundred guests go into camp for 2 weeks each summer. Here is presented a play of spectacular mythological character, and other rites are performed according to the custom of the club. The Bohemian Club contains 1,000 members, 300 of whom are residents of the world at large. And they include the most notable of America writers, painters, musicians, and composers, as well as men of business. It is a club with a long history and has included in its membership practically all the literary men who have spent a part of their life on the Pacific coast. Mark Twain, Bret Harte, Robert Louis Stevenson were among its distinguished members. Influence is manifold. It has been recognized for a number of years that the Grove play was exercising important effect upon American poetic and dramatic composition, and that it was one of the inspirational sources of the revival of pageantry. Yes, pageantry. But its effect is now seen to be even more fundamental. Arthur Farwell, president of the American Music Association, made the statement recently that the Grove play music was exercising a marked influence upon the development of musical composition in America. Said Mr. Steele last evening, the work of the Bohemian Club is perhaps better understand abroad than it is in America. Let's say that again. The work of the Bohemian Club is perhaps better, I think it's probably understood abroad, than it is in America. You may appreciate the value set upon it from the fact that two of the leading Italian composers of the present day, Leoncavallo and Mascagni, have each made quiet and informal requests that they be permitted to write the musical scores for the next play. The first serious work of Pixley, composer of The Prince of Pilsen and other light operas, was for the Grove play of this year. Origin of the play. The Grove play had its origin 35 years ago or more in a presentation of a dramatic ritual called the Cremation of Care. It was given each year by the members of the club in the Redwood Forest. Then the ritual came to be preceded by varied offerings, which grew in importance until the Cremation of Care appeared an anticlimax. It is now given on another evening, and the play, written each year by members of the club especially assigned to the task, is the principal feature of the encampment. The writers of the play is permitted 2 years for its preparation, and he needs it. It can summon all the assistance he needs, and the manner of the response may be illustrated from the fact that an engineer drawing a salary at $25,000 a year devoted 3 months of his time to the engineering problems connected with the play which I wrote. The fairies who appeared in the Fall of Ugg swung each from their pendulum, 175 feet in the air in length, of invisible wires suspended from the lofty branches of the redwoods. Although the plays are mythological, they are not by no means unrelated to the life of the present day. The Bohemian Club teaches the supplanting of hate with love, the spread of doctrine of brotherhood, and the triumph of spiritual power over weaknesses of mind and body. No better examples can be found than the play by Mr. Steele. Ugg represented the force of fear in the world. He was represented as an idol of terrible appearance, which, when overthrown, was seen to be merely a mask. The Bohemian Club is greatly aided by the fact that it can count on perfect weather conditions without rain. From May to September, the play and the outing can be planned with certainty that the elements will not interfere. Then there is something of the wine of life in the Western Coast country which makes men respond to the works of the club, said Mr. Steele. Sent Stevenson to Samoa. It is not generally known that the Bohemian Club was responsible for sending Robert Louis Stevenson to South Sea Island. He was living in San Francisco in such poor circumstances that he did not even have the necessities for life. A magazine, Scribner's I believe it was, arranged to send him on a trip to the Mediterranean to recoup his effort and pursue, and the money for his journey had already been sent to him. When Charles Stoddard reached San Francisco with such wonderful stories of South Sea that Stevenson straightway longed to travel in that direction. The Bohemian Club took up his cause and raised raised enough money to charter a yacht, in which the lovable storyteller went to the island of the Pacific. That is the story of his journey to Samoa. J.B. Weaver, at whose home Mr. Steele is a guest, attended the Grove play in the Bohemian Club Park last summer. Okay, there you go. So that gives you an idea again of the esteem that was given to these plays, almost ceremony, pageantry, as it's mentioned there. You know, they really like their pageantry. It's very weird. Obviously comes from their university and school days in America, where there's a lot of that. Less of it in Britain a lot of the time. You know, the pageantry is very distinct in each country, though, I suppose. But the pageantry in Britain has had years to die out, thousands of years. Pageantry in America is kind of taken on board, and it's an idea of things from the past. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to skip to a smaller selection of articles. Now, this is 1931. We're in the 17th of July, 1931, and we're back in the San Francisco Examiner. This is, remember, the paper where the Bohemian Club was first contrived. This was where they come up with it. This is where they decided, here we go, we're going to create this. Us newspaper men are going to create this. And maybe this was the point where the newspaper men took over the world. Because if they're able to influence the politicians and all the other people, then the newspapers were in control. Maybe that aligning between these big newspaper men and the New World Order in the 1960s and 70s by Kissinger and Nixon, that sort of the spying on them, and at the same time they were letting them spy on them, basically, because none of them complained. If anybody's seen my NEWSHOUND about Kissinger's 50th birthday party, well, everybody had been had their phones tapped, and then they still turn up to his birthday party anyway. Well, loads of them anyway. So this is called Grove Weeks Program Full. Remember, this is 16 years later, 1931. Here is a calendar of events for this year's encampment of the Bohemian Club at Bohemian Grove on the Russian River. Tonight, opening ceremony at Campfire Circle. Saturday, July 18th, dinner in honor of the senior members of the club, Charles F. Bulati, sire, followed by the 51st anniversary of the cremation of Care, James G. Swinnerton, sire. So, as you know, sire is like who's they're in charge of these things. Sunday, July 19th, concert by Bohemian Club Chorus and Campfire Orchestra, Robert C. Newell, director. Saturday, July 25th, the Low Jinx Bohemia, a 4-act comedy by Stanley McClue with music by Dr. Harry I. Vile. Sunday, July 26th, concert by Bohemian Club Band, William T. Pidwell, conductor. Wednesday, July 29th, concert by Bohemian Club Symphony Orchestra, Charles Hart, conductor. Friday, July 31st, the Friday night entertainment, Charles G. Norris, sire. And then Saturday, August the 1st, the Grove play, Joan, by W.B. Garthwaite, author, and Charles L. Safford, composer, directed by Vincent E. Duffrey. So in the 30s, there's still showing the program of events. And by the 30s, you can imagine their membership has grown and their influence has just increased. So this is like they get their own bit in the San Francisco Examiner, of course. And now we're going to skip really far into the future now, because of course there's loads that happens over this year. Well, there's 1931. Well, it lead up. All of these guys who are going to this are going to be fundamentally involved in the First World War, Second World War, and then the creation of the New World Order afterwards. So when Bohemian Grove gets back together afterwards, this whole new world has formed. CIA has been created. In 1947, you've got the old OSS being reformed and being changed into what is the CIA, and the coups start in 1952 in this year. And we're going to go along to the Honolulu Star Bulletin on the 1st of February 1952, and a Kamina column. A well-known Kamina native daughter, Maui, is again in Honolulu for her annual island visit. She is Iwanli Dickens Garland, Mrs. Gilmore F. Garland, now of San Francisco, second cousin once removed of the famous author Charles Dickens. The family branch to which her father belonged, living somewhere in the South, changed the spelling of their name to substitute an I for an E. Why, she has never known. Oh, that's an interesting one. For the past 12 years, Mrs. Garland has put on a program with Hawaiian touch. Every summer at the little town of Monterey on the Russian River in the northern California. Commandeering all available village talent to help her, this program preceded the crowning celebration of the Bohemian Club, following its annual hijinks at Bohemian Grove. Everyone has heard of the famous Bohemian Club of San Francisco, whose annual pilgrimage in July to their historic headquarters in Bohemian Grove is of national note. Their low jinks and hijinks are famous, more so because of the air of mystery surrounding them. Bohemian Club activities are strictly wahin kapu, women keep out. Wahin kapu, I'm going to remember that one. Wahin kapu, woman, get out. No woman has ever entered the sacred precincts of the famous grove. Stanley Kennedy is one of the Honolulu men who has been a guest at the Grove. Guests come from various parts of the country, and such men as the late Irwin S. Cobb, Edward Arnold, and Jean Hersholt have presided as masters of ceremony. The jamboree starts July the 15th and continues for several days. During the last evening of celebration, members and their guests board the Owl train and come down to Monterey. That is where Awalani Garland comes in. So is she going to be the first ever woman? Yeah, I think she is. At the community house in Monterey, she has been putting on her Hawaiian program, which includes many of her solo dances, both Hawaiian and Tahitian, being Tahitian and Irish on her mother's side, Scotch-English on her father's. She enjoys portraying the dances of Tahiti as much as she does those of Hawaii. The house, holding about 200, is always packed, and the proceeds of the entertainment go to Little Catholic Church on the hill. Although the program starts at 8, the line begins to form at 7, and every bit of available space is occupied. People come from Santa Rosa and surrounding towns to enjoy the festivities. All the children sit on the floor up in front. John Valencia of San Francisco has been the MC of the program for the past several years. As soon as he receives word that the Owl is on its way, and he and the Awani lead the group in mob slinging, which keeps up until the jubilant visitors arrive. The Bohemian Club brings along the highlights of its hijinks. Last July, a skit entitled Southern Comfort was put on. As soon as the members arrive, they take over the show, and from then on, revelry reigns supreme. Just about recovered from the recent automobile accident, Mrs. Garland is beginning more hula lessons this week with Tommy Iona. One can always learn something more, she says. Previously, she has studied with the late Mary Kay Hayunu, composer of He Loke Haupi Hulohe. Eh. Lucy Logan of Lai and the late Samuel Silver, who taught Aili Malaku Ku Iwo. Mrs. Garland's early girlhood was spent in Mary, where she attended St. Anthony's School for Girls, blah, 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 blah. That's very interesting. So, Miss Garland is a niece of Captain Curtis H. Dickens, U.S. Navy retired Chief of the Navy Chaplains years ago. It will be remembered that he visited Honolulu with the White Fleet in 1908. He retired in 1922 and is now at the age of 86, and recently married a spinster 58. After a restful stay in the Umara Hotel, Mrs. Garland is moving this week into an apartment. That's a strange... for the past 12 years, Miss Garland has put on a program with the Hawaiian Touch every summer, Little Town of Monterey on the Russian River in Northern California. This is the program precedes the crowning celebration. So it sounds like she was the first. Is that her? No. I was going to say that doesn't sound like someone you'd want to see. That's not someone you'd want to see in a hula dance. That's in some sort of Hawaiian dance. No, thank you. So that's intriguing, but it's a weird thing to say, but it seems like this woman, was the first ever Iwalani Dickens Garland, who Mrs. Gilmore F. Garland. Was the first woman to ever be allowed in the Bohemian Grove, and that's because she was going to dance. Now, there's a reason why this is interesting as well, because Bohemian Grove, you see Kissinger dancing hula. So obviously that's a big part of it, and I felt that needed to be in there. So let's go 3 years after. And we're probably halfway through, more than halfway through, maybe, this edition, but we're just having a little look at some of these other little articles. So it talks about this symphony conductor of Marin Symphony Orchestra is Clinton Lewis, a sensitive musician gifted with a high degree of technical skill. Besides his musical achievements in Marin County, he is the conductor of the Bohemian Club Orchestra in San Francisco and has directed more of the club's Grove plays than has any other conductor. In 1949, he was elevated to Bohemian Club's most exclusive list of 50, the 50 living Bohemians who have contributed the most to the art. He has been a member of the Bohemian Club since 1928, when he conducted the club orchestra from 1934 to 1937, and again from 1945 to the present time, with the exception of the year 1952 to 1953, which he spent with Mrs. Lewis on the tour of Europe. Born in Manchester, North Hampshire, I suppose it is, he became early to California and was graduated from Los Angeles High School. He attended the University of California, Bush Conservatory of Music in Chicago. So, I mean, he's an interesting guy. I'm not going to have to read too much about this. There's not much. He just mentions how this Clinton Lewis is basically the Bohemian Club's main go-to guy for being a musical conductor. He conducts loads. Look at it, there he goes. He's a man's man. There you go, member of the Marine Orchestra. It's worth noting these people as they go and what they've done for the Grove, because that's what the Grove still claims to be. But by this point, it's changed, hasn't it? And here we go. This is a new world as been running now since 1945 to 1947. There was a concerted effort by the West to increase their own propaganda in line with potential Soviet propaganda. It became a propaganda battle. A lot of it was a Cold War, of course, threats of all different things from all different sides. By 1959, Kissinger's foreign policy and nuclear war is out, and people are really, really deep in this system. And this, you see, this is different changed now. This is Kozlov, Don Six Shooter, still plugs peace theme. San Francisco, the barnstorming Soviet deputy premier wearing a 6-gun climbed aboard a cow pony at Sonoma County Winery Sunday and gave a Soviet-style imitation of the Lone Ranger. A group of smiling spectators watched as Deputy Frol R. Kozlov waved from horseback as photographers' cameras clicked. Kozlov, beaming a little nervously, stayed up 60 seconds, then dismounted with an air of relief. "This is enough. I go no further," he said in Russian. The deputy uttered one English sentence during his tour of the winery. He told the owner, "Business will be good." In Russian, he amplified, "We will try to help you capitalists do better business." Kozlov looked more like the conventional mold of a capitalist than did his hosts, the brothers Aldolf Paul and Ben Heck. In their colourful plaid shirts and work clothes, the visitors wore a grey summer-weight business suit and fedora hat. The Heck brothers were kept busy answering Kozlov's questions about winemaking, marketing, and pricing. The deputy toasted each brother in different coloured champagne, red, white, and pink, praising all three. "If you make red champagne here, it may associate you with red affiliation," he quipped. The Hecks chuckled politely. After inspection of the vine-rolling landscape made famous by Jack London as the Valley of the Moon, and commented, "It is a magnificent place. God must have meant this place especially for vineyards." For the two 12-year-olds who brought up the pony, Gary Heck, son of Adolf and Kurt Bombasher, he produced gold and white doves of peace, which he pinned on each. Then he and the party moved along the Russian River to the Bohemian Grove summer retreat of the exclusive Bohemian Club of San Francisco, a secluded spot amongst the redwood. It is much favored by former President Herbert Hoover. Kozlov recalled the Tsarist adventure obliquely at the lavish luncheon given him by the Bohemian Club. In his brief speech of thanks, he said, "I myself could not understand why the Russians left such a wonderful place, but in all candor, speaking as a Russian, we have no regrets. We wish you may always spend your leisure time here. You, the representative of Americans and the American working people, we too have some wonderful places in our own country for our working people to come and rest." When two club members sang an impromptu song which asked why the Russians should leave such a lovely place and go back to the cold snows of Russia, Kozlov, who had been getting a translation of the word, shouted, "That was a big mistake of the Russians." He thanked his host, most of them wealthy businessmen and bankers, for their hospitality and some redwood seeds they had given him. "We will plant them in a suitable climate, and I shall watch them grow and be a symbol of our growing friendship," he declared. Kozlov hit the friendship theme hard, remarking that he had been proposed as an honorary member of the exclusive Bohemian Club, and said, "I am sure the time is not far off when I can become a full member." He has been plugging better Soviet-American friendship on his tour, along with peaceful coexistence and the summit meeting. The Bohemian Grove has been mentioned as a possible American site for such a meeting. There you go. Look at that. That's amazing. Okay, so the Soviet deputy premier comes to America, goes to the Grove, and it's thought that's where they basically one day will have peace meetings, is in Bohemian Grove. Now you got to realize, so Kissinger's already in Bohemian Grove by this point. He's already a member, and he's just written about nuclear foreign policy and nuclear war and foreign policy. And look, where does the deputy premier come to when he's doing this peace tour of America? He comes to the place which he's most likely to meet and be able to coordinate with the people who are most in charge, and that is Bohemian Grove, not the White House. It's Bohemian Grove. So that was the first part of this Bohemian Grove NEWSHOUND. It's going to be over 2 parts because they're about an hour and a half and an hour and 20 minutes long, because it's quite a lot. In the next part, we're going to look at the really interesting phase of 1960s, 1970s and onwards. Of course, how the Bohemian Grove elite like Kissinger and people became the center of it. Nixon, Eisenhower and Hoover, and all of these people became central characters in this Bohemian Grove story. Even Robert Kennedy shows up. And what happens afterwards when the entity created in a room by a load of newspaper men back in 1872 turns eventually into something else, another type of beast, and the newspaper men come after them. And they come after them in the same way you saw at the beginning as well. It's 2 different ways. But it's a very interesting story. Very interesting because it'll lead us to how they wanted to try and frame it later on, that thinking anything of a load of rich, powerful people connecting and networking at a really strange event that has lots of pageantry and ceremony, how that ends up basically not being seen as a conspiracy theory. If you doubt that's normal. If you say, oh, there's something wrong there, something's happening, I don't understand it, what is it, it looks like they're conspiring, then you're a conspiracy theorist. And so that's how they wanted to paint it eventually, and we'll go through that on the next episode, which will be out within the week. So thank you for joining me. Support me on various websites I'm on. So I'm on johnnyvedmore.com, bungymonkey.com. I've also got a new project coming soon, and I need your help. I need your support if I'm going to keep going on like this, and I'm going to keep producing content and keep informing people of stuff that's out there, writing massive articles and all of this. I need your support. You can find ways to support me, especially at johnnyvedmore.com. And so please do so. Have a nice one. Thank you for joining me on this NEWSHOUND.
Young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.